Alright, what's up, y'all? Hope you're doing well. Back with a romance anime couple review. Today, we're talking about a show called The Case Study of Vanitas. It came out back in 2021 and 2022 with 2 different seasons, and there's a couple in that show, Vanitas and Jeanne, that I really enjoyed. I really liked. The show kind of resurfaced, I guess, back in my timeline because it just happens like that sometimes. And I was watching the moments again, and I was like, you know what? I want to make a video about this because I feel it's a really underrated show in romance, and I just wanted to go through it and talk about it today. So that's what we're gonna do. Like always on this channel, trying to strive for one full video per week. We've been doing that. Y'all been showing love. I really appreciate it. And yeah, we're doing the videos. Our shorts will be coming out probably next week. Make one. And also the season of anime that's continuing right now is about to finish in another week or two. We're about to get our episode 12s or 13s of different shows. And so next couple weeks, you're gonna be seeing the new romance animes that just finished up. You're going to see those videos, and I'm very excited for them. Very excited to watch them. Very excited to dive into them. I've heard and seen a lot of great things, so I'm very ready for it. So stay lookout for the content coming soon. But yeah, again, trying for one video per week and trying to keep it going. Now, let's get into the romance anime review. So today, Case Study of Vanitas. It's not specifically a romance anime, which is why I said romance anime couple earlier. There's a lot more to it. Vampires, all that type of stuff. Like I always say in every review, go check out the original show if you want the full explanation for everything, because I'm not going to be able to explain everything and give every single detail on everything that happens to the story to make it make sense. If you want the full context, want to watch the show, appreciate the show, always suggest to go supporting the original content and watching the show and formulating your own opinions and on things you like, because I'm just a guy out here talking, but there's romance in it, there's a great couple in it, so obviously I'm there. So our 2 characters to talk about today. First, we have Vanitas, who is the main character of the story and obviously named after. Vanitas is a human being, but he calls himself the vampire doctor. He specializes in, trying to save vampires, breaking their curses, trying to turn them back into regular people. He is a regular person in his own right. He has the Book of Vanitas that is written, I guess, that he uses and a lot of people want. He's basically like a kind of, not vampire detective, but before vampire saver, vampire hunter, a little bit away. Has a big relationship with vampires. And yeah, very kind of gets snarky, I guess you could say sometimes, where he knows a lot of things, he gets very teasy at some points, very funny at some points. And the inside, he is a really good guy, even though he doesn't think of himself as a good guy or think of himself at a high level, but he really is a good guy on the inside. And then we have Jeanne. Jeanne. I'm probably going to pronounce her name different every time I say it. I apologize, but that's just, I guess, how it looks and how it's written. Jeanne has a very interesting backstory. She was a burrow a long time ago. She's a vampire. She was an enslaved, vampire that was killed over 1,000 of them. She was like vampire killer, a slave basically, before, she got put into a coma. And now she's basically reborn into this new life after the war, being the bodyguard of Master Luca, who is like the Grand Duke. He's a big time person in this world. And yeah, she's basically, they call her the Hellfire Witch, which is a badass name. So now let's get into the moment between these two. The first meeting is when Vanitas and another guy named Noe, the archivist, who they're very close. Again, if you want to fill in all the layers and all the context, everything, go watch the show and figure it out on your own. I'll be here for 2 hours if I have to explain everything. Vanitas and Noe, they try to catch a curse bearer. Now, a curse bearer is someone that has been kind of put under this curse and spell by a vampire, basically kind of turning into a vampire. It's the easiest way to describe it, is someone that has been turned kind of into a vampire, but not maybe fully all the way yet. It's still kind of human, but turned into a vampire a little bit. And Vanitas, obviously his job, and what he wants to do is protect the vampires and save them, turn them back into regular people. So Vanitas and Noah are trying to go catch a curse barrel, to where Luca and Jeanne go there, find them. They find out that they are vampires, and they try to take Vanitas' grimoire, the Book of Vanitas, which is a very popular book that has a lot of things in it that helps with vampires and all that stuff. Jeanne ends up trying to fight Vanitas, trying to get the book, and that's where we learn she's the Hellfire Witch, and we learn about her backstory a little bit. Jeanne beats Vanitas up to start. She is super powerful. She has the Carpe Diem. She is super powerful and really strong. And Vanitas ends up making a plan, that ends up wounding Jeanne, and he also threatens to hurt Luca, if they don't, I guess, kind of back off to where Jeanne starts having to beg because, again, she's like the bodyguard of Luca, and everything that happens to Luca reflects on her. So she's begging, like, please don't hurt Luca. You can do anything you want to me, but please just don't, And she like basically begs and kind of cracks that little, tough Hellfire Witch persona to where Vanitas really enjoys it. He even says it. He likes seeing her beg. He likes to see her have a vulnerable, weak moment because he's insane like that. He ends up becoming intrigued by her, pins her against the wall, and ends up kissing her very unpromptedly. And it's a very intense moment. Jeanne is so confused. Everybody around is confused. You're like, what the heck is going on? And Vanitas is very, overstimulated maybe by the kiss. He starts looking like he becomes obsessed with her, saying, oh my God, now I want more. He gets to confessing his love to her, saying, I love you, I want you to be my bride, all this stuff. And Jeanne is very kind of overwhelmed and very like, bro, what the heck is this guy talking about? And her and Luca eventually end up running away. With a first meeting going like that, you definitely tell something crazy was about to happen in the future. And you see both of their personalities. With Vanitas very kind of like, and in some sense unashamedly himself and very confident in himself in some regards, and uses that like flirting, teasing as a little bit of like a trick, I guess, up his sleeve. While Jeanne, you see like the toughness and the witchness of it, but then you also see the other parts of her where she gets, she's just a regular person that gets vulnerable sometimes. That's just what it is. The next time they end up meeting each other is at this party a little bit later. Again, a lot of things happen in between, but eventually they end up at a party, and Vanitas makes himself known as like, I'm Vanitas, I'm the vampire doctor, I'm gonna be the one that's gonna save all you curse bearers and vampires and help turn you back into people, all that stuff. And he's about to get hurt, about to get kind of ambushed by this other person before Jeanne comes in masked and basically takes him out of the situation and saves him from getting hurt. They end up going onto this little like balcony thing during the party, and Jeanne starts acting really weird, very kind of differently from what we saw earlier, looking at Vanitas, thinking about Luca, thinking about blood, and it's kind of like, what's going on here? And Vanitas asks, like, are you a curse bearer? To where she doesn't really answer, and we learn that like her thinking, her mentality, she really needs to suck blood. Jeanne is like kind of freaking out, losing her mind, being like, I need blood, what do I do? Vanitas ends up cornering her on the little like, I guess, pillar or whatever, and he ends up offering his blood, taking off, exposing his neck and offering Jeanne the blood, to where Jeanne's like, why would you do that? Like, why do you need? You're just a human, aren't you? Like, I could kill you. What's up? And Vanitas is kind of like, I don't really know. I'm just kind of intrigued by it, so why not? To where Jeanne ends up biting him, sucking his blood in a very passionate moment. It's funny how in this show, like, the way they do, like, this show gets very steamy and spicy at some points. Not even just these two, with other characters as well. But it's kind of like the way they make it seem, like the biting and the sucking blood, how they make it seem such like an intimate moment, where in reality, that probably hurts like hell. Later, after the whole party fiasco, everybody's at dinner. Vanitas, Jeanne, Luca, Noe, Dami, everybody's at this dinner. And we're talking, Vanitas helps save a lot of people, all this stuff. And Luca, like, I'll give you your thanks or whatever, but first I want you to apologize for what happened the other day. And Vanitas asks, like, well, who am I apologizing to? And he says, Jeanne. And to where he says, well, I don't need to apologize to Jeanne because we're in love with each other. So everyone's like, what? And even Jeanne's like, why are you lying? Like, shut up. And Vanitas takes out, reveals his neck and sees a mark that Jeanne left on him during the blood sucking. And this mark, according to him, I literally took his words exactly and wrote it down. When vampires give the victims of their bloodlust some of their power, kind of, I guess, as more of like, it's like marking them as like, you, like, I gave you some of my blood, my power, so now you're like a part of me. It's something like that.
I don't know the full terminology of it, to be honest with you. That's the only way, that's what he described it as, so that's how I wrote it down.
And Vanitas starts going on, teasing Jeanne at the table about the blood-sucking incident, like using different things, being like, man, you were so rough with it, and all that stuff, to where Jeanne is just like, oh my God, what the heck? And everyone else is kind of like, what is happening? And Luca, who, very close to Jeanne, maybe has a little bit of crush on Jeanne, but he's just a little kid, whatever. And, Luca's like just crushed by this. But then Vanitas ends up actually being like, well, he lies to Luca, basically making up a story about why that happened to make it kind of sound better and not blow Jeanne's cover as potentially a curse bearer. To where Jeanne eventually ends up stealing Vanitas, takes him away, and they go to an alley to talk privately. While they're back there talking at the alley, they're still asking the question of like, Jeanne, are you a curse bearer? To where she still doesn't really answer the question on if she is or is she not. But basically, she kind of just doesn't want anybody to know about, you know, the blood sucking or anything. And Vanitas actually said, like, I made up that lie to Luca because I could tell you didn't really want to talk about it, which is really, really nice by him that he picked up on that. I was like, I won't let her, I won't air her out, so I'm just going to make up something. You know, it's showing that he actually does care in his heart at some point, and it's not just about the flirting and the teasing and all that stuff. So Jeanne basically asks him, like, hey, please don't tell anybody about this. To where Vanitas says, I won't, under 2 conditions. First, you don't suck anyone else's blood but mine, because it felt great and I want to keep doing that with you. And number 2, call me by my name instead of calling me human, because Jeanne always calls him human and doesn't really like him a whole lot. Vanitas says, all right, suck my blood and call me by my name and we're all good. 2 conditions. To where Jeanne eventually ends up getting worked up, because now they're close together and all that stuff, and Jeanne ends up getting worked up and the feeling of wanting to suck the blood is coming out. And so she ends up calling him Vanitas, opening the shirt, bites the neck, ends up taking the blood. It's funny because it's kind of like Vanitas has her a little bit like under his spell in some sense, even though we know Jeanne is like, to everybody else in the world, Jeanne is this ultra powerful killer, hellfire witch, you know, this tough, the bodyguard, you know, no one breaks her through. But when it's Vanitas, it's just completely different now. You know, she wants to act tough, she wants to be kind of like, I hate you, whatever. But again, now the urge to suck blood and all of that, now that's already done it once with Vanitas, now she's completely just a different person, you know. And it's really, really interesting to see that kind of like, you know, that difference in her with everyone else versus him. A little bit later, Vanitas, Noe, Jeanne, and Domi, they're all kind of in the middle of like some sort of town, whatever, having fun. They start dancing. Jeanne and Domi and then Vanitas and Noe start dancing. And Noe asks Vanitas at first, like, hey, what is love? You know, because he saw Vanitas and Jeanne earlier in the alley. He theorized and kind of understood Jeanne is sucking Vanitas' blood. And he is a very, you know, kind of shy, kind of like, airhead-y kind of boy, just very kind of sheltered boy, you know, very sweet boy. And so he asks Vanitas, like, hey, what is love? What all this is about? To where Vanitas kind of says, like, you know, it's like this random feeling in your heart, you know, that you just know, I guess, kind of, in a way. He says it in a way of like, it's something in his heart that is like different than anything else you feel. And he defined it as love. He actually doesn't really know either. But he said, I define that kind of feeling. The only way it could be described is as love, even though I don't know if it's love or if it's not love, but I call it love because that's just what it feel like it is. So then Noe asks him, well, what do you like about Jeanne? And Vanitas goes on, basically says, strong, beautiful, awkward, delicate, ample bosom, I like to tease her, you know, all that stuff, all the other ones. And at the end, he said also the fact that, you know, she will never love me, because Noah's like, well, kind of like asking follow-up questions. So Vanitas is like, I don't even care if she likes me, and I actually prefer if she doesn't like me. You know, like, that's completely fine. If it's a one-sided thing, I don't really care, because I have no interest in someone that will love me. And a very real kind of like turd of a moment where it's like, dang, like, whoa, dang, Vanitas, like, you want to talk to somebody? Like, dang, that is really, really interesting. And it's funny that he says all those things about Jeanne and obviously really cares about her and says, like, yeah, she has all these different things about her I love or whatever, but also she won't love me, and I like that a lot more, that she's never gonna love me. A little bit sometime after that, Vanitas ends up getting an invitation and a letter sent to him to meet up with Jeanne outside. So goes to the meeting spot where Jeanne is there in a very lovely dress, and she asks him out on a date. And it's like, whoa, progress is being made, ladies and gentlemen. And she actually starts acting really like lovey, and it's like, man, you saved me so many times and all this stuff. And it's kind of saying, maybe I might have fallen for you, I don't know. And it's very kind of like, what's happening right now? Like, is this a dream? Is this real? What's going on? To where eventually we learn that Jeanne is doing this, she's putting on an act. You know, she wants to do this so that he will hate her and stop bothering her all the time. So she had a conversation with Domi, and was like, how do I get Vanitas to hate me? I want this to stop. I don't want him to be all on me. Like, I don't like this. To where Dami remembers, I can Noe, because Nomi and Dami are very close. That's who Dami, I didn't explain who Dami is. Her and Noe are very close. She's a part of the story later down the line, whatever. But basically, Noe kind of told her, like, yeah, Vanitas said, you know, he likes girls that don't, like, he'll probably never be interested in someone that actually likes him. And Jeanne realizes, and she's like, oh, okay. So I'm just going to go out and force myself on him and make him think that I love him, and then he won't like me anymore. Great plan. So let's go on a date, and we'll try to figure this out now. When Jeanne asks him out, Vanitas gets very intrigued by it, and they end up going out together on the date. And Vanitas ends up saying, hey, that dress, you know, that look really, you know, lovely on you, nice on me. And she's like, oh yeah, Tommy picked it out, the dress is really, really cool, whatever. So Vanitas says, well, no, Jeanne, I'm talking about you. Like, you look lovely. To where she gets very, very flustered, and that's something that happens for the entire date. Because later, they're walking, she walks in the middle of a row where a car is coming, he saves her from getting hit by the car, to where she, once again gets flustered and very like, oh my god, Vanitas. And Vanitas just the entire day is being just a nice, respectful guy, saying, hey, where do you want to go? Let's do this, let's do this, let's do this. They go on a nice date around, they're in Paris, so, you know, obviously, very nice things to do around there. And Jeanne is kind of going crazy the entire day, because she's like, what's going on? Why is he actually being like a good person right now? Why am I getting flustered? Why am I, you know, like actually liking this? I don't like this. This is weird. This is the opposite of what I wanted to do. A little later, they're sitting on a bench. Vanitas had to end up going to the bathroom, and Jeanne is sitting there practicing. How am I gonna basically land the final blow? Vanitas basically try to confess to love and all that stuff, and you know, like how am I gonna do that so that this can finally end and Vanitas will kind of get off of me? Anyway, she's sitting there practicing, kind of murmuring and muttering to herself. And when she's saying all this, she ends up getting really flustered. She's like, wait a minute, why am I actually, like, my heart's beating out of my chest because of this? It shouldn't be like this. To where Vanitas hears all this, comes up and hears her and says, yes, I will be with you, or whatever. To where Jeanne completely breaks character. She's like, no, I don't want this. No, I was doing, like, all this stuff based breaking character. Very, very funny. Like I was saying earlier, it's something about Vanitas that makes Jeanne very just like, you know, different. You know, very different. It's because it's like different attitude. It's flirty, teasing attitude, being annoying, but also being nice and respectful in some ways. And again, the blood sucking, obviously they have a big connection there. And, you know, like it's just something there, you know, that's just different. And yeah, it's really fun to watch. While they're there, some kids coming by playing soccer, and you know, soccer ball goes over towards Jeanne and Vanitas, and one of the kids scrapes their knee, and their knee starts bleeding, to where Jeanne sees the blood and turns into a different mode. You know, the blood sucking, thirsting for blood comes out, and she ends up lunging at the kid, trying to suck the blood out of him, to where Vanitas ends up grabbing her really quick and having to take her away. Eventually, they end up in some sort of room. I don't know exactly where they are, but they end up in some sort of room to where she's licking up the blood that's on his hands. I don't know how the blood got on his hands. Pause this for a second. Post-editing me here. So I literally just said in the video, I don't know where he got the blood on his hands. I don't know. And I'm going to start theorizing, like, did Vanitas' arm accidentally brush the kid's knee and all of a sudden got blood on it? Did you know, Jeanne bite him maybe off screen, you know, or maybe Vanitas offered her some blood? Literally in the last frame, you see Jeanne's teeth was already out, and it just so happened to bite Vanitas when Vanitas was holding her back. But for some reason, I just didn't think of this or didn't see it. So yeah, local dumbass here doing dumbassery. All right, go back to the video now. Once again, he asks again, Jeanne, are you a curse bearer? Like, are you a vampire? What's going on? To where as soon as he says this, Jeanne goes through like these flashbacks and ends up getting like developing some sort of trauma, you know, from her past. And sees a lot of blood and sees just, she ends up like going crazy mentally, you know, like seeing all these flashes and weird things of trauma. And we actually never get the answer in the entire show of is she a curse bearer or not. We don't really know. She just has some sort of condition that needs her to suck blood, and she ends up going crazy again, and then ends up pinning Vanitas down to the couch or whatever they're on, and ends up sucking his blood. And again, another very passionate, spicy moment. While this is happening though, Jeanne ends up thinking of Luca, to where she gets up and she starts crying and spilling all of her feelings, saying that she's really scared that one day she'll harm Luca, and that she's slowly losing her sanity, and one day she's gonna mentally break and she's not gonna know who she is anymore, and maybe she's gonna take Luca's blood, and all things will basically go to hell. And she's very scared about that, to where Vanitas ends up grabbing her, holding her, and saying, "But if it comes to that day, if it ever reaches that point where you lose yourself, I promise I will kill you." Which I know sounds crazy, but in this show, in this world, that just makes sense. That's what you're supposed to do once they're like too far off the bridge. It's like, okay, we got to kill them just for their own sake. So it was very sweet, even though it sounds crazy. Very wholesome moment. Like, probably the most wholesome moment they've had. Where like Jeanne is really like finally expressing her feelings and expressing herself for the first time. And Vanitas, instead of taking advantage of this or whatever, he like really is there for Jeanne. It's barely showing again that he actually really does care. It's not just a teasing, flirting moment. It's like very like, no, actually I really care about you, and I promise like I will do you your favor, and I will end up taking you out if you really, really need to. And it really again just puts the, makes his relationship even better, that they're able to have these sort of, moments. They end up walking home together after that, where Jeanne accidentally spills her whole plan of like the fake date and trying to confess to him, to where he like laughs about it basically. Now we go a lot later into season 2. There's a lot of things that happen in season 2. Unfortunately, I'm not gonna be able to really explain all of it, because there's a lot of things that happen. All right, but eventually Jeanne ends up finding Vanitas wounded in the forest after a fight, and she takes him to a cabin and ends up nursing him because it's in the middle of the winter, it's cold, snowing, a storm is coming, and Jeanne is like, well, we can't leave you out here like this. Takes him into the cabin, and while they're in the cabin, we see a completely different 180 of Jeanne, a confident Jeanne, one that doesn't care, just wants to see Vanitas back healthy. She ends up lighting a fire, She ends up lighting a fire, tells him to strip out of, his clothes, because he gets wet and all that. And Vanitas is kind of, if we see the opposite, where Vanitas is the flustered, shy one, like, this is, like, why are you being so forward? You're being really forward right now. What's going on? Like, are you just trying to get back at me? What's going on? She also strips down as well, and they end up cuddling together in a blanket in front of the fire. They end up talking about, there's this character named Chloe, who was like Jeanne's best friend when they were a kid, and now it looks like she might be cursed with like a beast inside her, all this type of stuff. It gets very kind of sad and deep, and they're talking about Chloe and the plan, like, how do we do this, like all that type of stuff. And Jeanne ends up telling Vanitas, hey, you gotta drink, I could stay hydrated, all this, to where he's like, no, I don't want to, can I just stay here, like, I don't feel like it, whatever. To where she's like, okay, you don't want to drink and take your medicine? All right, I'll do it for you then. She ends up drinking it and kisses him, and like baby birds puts the liquid down his throat during the kiss. And it was a moment for me where I just like, man, I'm really in love right now. Very spicy moment. They do a lot of those spicy moments in this show, if you couldn't tell. They do a lot. They love those. And I'm here for it, man. That was a moment. It was like, wow, again, complete 180. It's funny, like the role shift of like Vanitas always being the teasing one, always being the one that's like doing all these things, and Jeanne being the embarrassed one that kind of like is very, out of her shell. It looks like different than what we usually see of her. Now it's the reverse, where Jeanne's the one confident, taking over things and doing all this stuff. And Vanitas is the one that's kind of like being the one out of his own body, kind of being like, what is it? What's going on? What are you doing? What's happening here? Kind of showing maybe he's all bark and no bite. The next morning, Vanitas is okay. She ends up waking up and realizing and kind of contextualizing what she did last night, all the embarrassing things she did, to where she hates herself for it. A little later, Jeanne is kind of in her own head. She had a conversation with Chloe and ends up realizing she might have to kill Chloe to save her from her own self. But she still thinks that I can save Chloe and she can go back to being normal and all that stuff. And Vanitas comes to there, and I don't remember if it's a dream or imagination, to be completely honest. Like, at this point, I kind of speed watched through a lot of things, so I don't know the full entire context of everything. But Vanitas comes there, it talks to her there, and basically talks her into potentially having to end up killing her, because Vanitas says, like, I love you, and, you know, I would do the same for you. Basically, that's why I promised. That's what I was going to do for you, right? So, like, you might have to end up killing her. He also wants her to ask for help. It's like, John, it's okay. You're not doing this by yourself. Ask for my help. To where she does, like, you know, vulnerable woman say, Vanitas, I need your help with this situation. After a long battle and everything going on, Vanitas ends up saving Chloe. Chloe doesn't die. She just, you know, the curse is a little bit lifted off her and all that stuff. Everybody's kind of okay at this point. And eventually, Vanitas is very wounded. There's a big battle. And Jeanne ends up coming out of nowhere, running up to him, hugging him, thanking him, you know, so much for everything that he did. Until eventually, because they're so close, she smells the blood in the water. Ends up getting worked up again. Ends up pinning him down to the ground in this, like, beautiful bed of flowers. It's really well animated. Starts sucking his blood. And Vanitas is kind of like, hey, you know, time and place for everything. Why we don't have to do this in front of anybody right here. You know, we can do this later or whatever. Getting very flustered again. During the blood sucking, Jeanne gets up from off him and ends up kissing him on the cheek. A very, like, whoa type of moment where it's like, whoa, this is actually, like, really, you know, sweet moment. And she ends up reiterating, like, remember what you said, if I lose it, you know, you're gonna end up killing me, you know, like that's what you're gonna do, right? You keep your promise, please. And Vanitas is sitting there just stunned, kind of like, what was that? What is going on? And during this moment, he's having the flashbacks of memories of his past self, and remembering being told, like, you know, if he opens up his heart, he'll find someone. You know, you're gonna find someone to warm you up in the coldness and all that different type of stuff. And Vanitas is kind of like shaken up over this, of like, whoa, like, she kissed me, she thanked me. This was a genuine, real, passionate, loving moment, and I don't know what to do with myself anymore. And maybe also turning the table on Jeanne, like, actually opening up her heart to Vanitas as well. Instead of being so closed off and being like, I hate you and all that stuff, like kind of enemies to lovers-ish type of route, where now Jeanne realized, like, oh, Vanitas is actually a great guy. He saved me so many times. Like, I really feel a sort of respect and a passion and a love for him. After this, Vanitas starts acting really weird and sick when they end up getting home. You know, like, he's all up in his own head, really kind of like disturbed. Like, I don't know what to do. I don't know what's happening. You know, he says, like, I don't know what Jeanne did to me, but it's messing with my head and I feel off. I don't know what to do, all this stuff. Basically, he's lovesick. This is his first time being in love, and he really doesn't know what to do with it because, again, I remember what you said earlier, way earlier, he was like, you know, I wouldn't like anyone that actually loves me, and no one actually will love me and all that stuff. And now it's coming back to him where it's like, wait, someone might be, you know, I'm in love with somebody, actually? Like, what's happening right now? Eventually ends up running into two guys that really helped him and No Way Out earlier. Again, long story. To explain all that, you can go watch the show for the full context of that. And they're sitting together, you know, at a restaurant outside, eating, having fun, you know, conversation. Vanitas runs into them, ends up sitting together, eating with them, and asking for advice. To where he uses so my friend is in love with someone, using that strategy. To where they both know, like, okay, so you, even though they don't say it out loud, but they say, okay, so you're in love with somebody. To where he says, like, there's this girl that this friend, you know, is very confused about. I don't know. He says, at first, he was just entertained by her interactions, you know, interacting with her and entertained by that. But then he ended up seeing so many sides of her that he didn't expect. And then he ended up seeing her smile the biggest ever and had a kiss on the cheek like never before seen. And now can't stop thinking about her. And a very, like, super cute, super cute. And the friends end up telling her, hey man, that's love. I don't know what you think, that's love, dude. And they even trying to help him up. They're like, hey, maybe this girl loves you back, you know, loves him back. And Vanitas is like, well, there's no way that's true, because no one would ever love me. And that's like kind of a heartbreak. Like, everybody is stunned for a second. They're like, whoa, damn, dude. Like, you got a lot of stuff going on mentally, but she does have a lot of stuff going on, you know, in his head. If you watch the show, he's had a very hard life. But yeah, like, again, the vulnerability now of him, it's like a completely different person from what we've seen throughout the entire first, 15 or whoever episodes before this, where this is a confident, snarky, kind of like, you know, smart, always smiling, teasing type of dude. And now all of a sudden, he's just like such a vulnerable, sort of a mess in a way. And now we cut to the other side of Jeanne, where we see Jeanne's life, and we see Jeanne has been thinking about Vanitas a lot too. to where her and Luca are having a conversation, and Jeanne's like, dang, I've really been thinking about Vanitas a lot, you know? And she says like, dang, maybe I fell for him. To where Luca's like, oh god, no. And so eventually she ends up talking to Luca and Domi about her feelings. And, you know, Domi and Luca kind of trying to snap her out of it. They're like, hey, like, that's Vanitas, by the way, you know that, right? The person that you went on a date with just to break the heart of, you know, like that person. Like, no way you can love that, someone like that. To where she's like, well, you know, he saved me so many times. He's a nice person. He saved Chloe. He's actually a good guy, and all this stuff. And this is the exact opposite of how Vanitas feels. Like, she's actually thrilled. She's like, oh my god, I'm in love with somebody. Like, this is great. You know, like she's accepted it right away, and kind of like, dang, okay, wow, yeah, this is thrilling for me. But then she also ends up saying, you know, I'm afraid though that I'm gonna get too excited, and when I see him again, I might just take him right there. And I'm not exaggerating. She literally basically says that, where she says like, if next time I see him, I might just, you know, take it right there, and right then and there. That's how I operate. And then she ends up saying, you know, I can't tell Vanitas how I feel right away, you know, because, you know, a lot of stuff, other outer stuff going on. I'm not going to tell him right away. You know, I have to learn how to act normal around him. It's so funny, again, the contrast between these two characters from the beginning to the end. Where, again, at the beginning, you know, Vanitas was just like this snarky guy, and Jeanne was like the, you know, Hellfire Witch. And then Vanitas ended up breaking Jeanne out of her shell a little bit, you know, and kind of poke. And then they had the whole, you know, blood sucking thing to where, again, you know, Vanitas was kind of being there for Jeanne, you know, and then the role reversal of Jeanne being the confident one and Vanitas kind of being the, you know, shy one when Jeanne was taking care of him, you know, and then after where Jeanne had to be the vulnerable one again, asked Vanitas for help with Chloe, you know, and then after the Chloe situation, Jeanne now being fully kind of open with Vanitas, and, you know, the arc of now her being fully open with Vanitas and be like, I love you, thank you, all that stuff. And now Vanitas is the one that kind of is like, I don't know about all this. Like, he's kind of like the one that's kind of in a shell a little bit and kind of being like, I don't know, I'm going in uncharted territory. I don't know what to do about it. You know, and now again, Jeanne being so overly thrilled about this, being in love, and Vanitas kind of still kind of working through those emotions, being like, is this actually real? Should I actually want this? Is this what I like? What was going on? And unfortunately, that's it. There's like 5 more episodes after this, but unfortunately, we don't really get anything else because another big thing happens and we have to take care of those issues. And it's unfortunate that that's kind of how the way their story ends. We never get really like a full, like, you know, like moment of them confessing, or a moment of them, you know, stating their feelings for each other, or any moment between them ever again in the show. And it's really, really unfortunate because they deserve to have a really nice ending. They deserve to, you know, I really, obviously would have really loved to see it, because who knows what happens there. Maybe does Jeanne take him right away? Does Vanitas end up being very vulnerable and being like this towards Jeanne, where he's very kind of shy and doesn't know what to do? Like, it's unfortunate that's kind of the way it ends, you know? But, I mean, incredible. Like, I love these two characters, actually, individually and with each other. You know, like, with each other, you just get so much of everything. You get kind of enemies to lovers, you get, you know, some pining, you get tension, you get spicy moments, you get them caring about each other, you get, you know, them changing roles a little bit. You get to see all the personalities and all the sides of them. You get to see so much of it, you know, and I really love it a whole lot. I'm really here for it, and I just really appreciate both of these characters. Really, like, I really do love them a lot. I think they deserve to get more credit and more love and more, you know, the show in general deserves to get more love and credit because it's very, very underrated. But Vanitas and Jeanne really carried a lot of it for me. You know, there's so much more to it, like the vampire stuff and the storytelling. Overall, again, great show overall. Like, it's not just this that really gets me, you know, hooked, invested in the show, but it's a big reason for it. You know, but yeah, I think they did these couples so great. I love them so much, and yeah, hopefully if it ever does come back, because again, in anime you never know when it comes back or not. Maybe I have to go read the manga, you know, which I wouldn't mind doing. But yeah, man, I would love to see a good ending for them. But at the end of the day, we got so much between these two, And I'm a big fan of this couple right here, man. 2 thumbs up. Big fan. Yeah, that's gonna be all I got for today. Once again, trying to keep the 1 full video per week schedule going. The new romances are finishing up, so that means more content coming soon, more videos, shorts, and all that stuff. Very, very, very excited for that, so be on the lookout for the content coming. If you do like the video, hit the like button. You know, if you like this, leave a comment down below about either the show or about anything. It just helps out the algorithm, so leave a comment. We really appreciate it. Also, leave it a like. And if you do like the content, hit subscribe. You know, if you want to support the channel, if you like romance anime, want to keep up with romance anime, like hear me yap about romance anime, leaving a subscribe, you know, and supporting the channel will be really much appreciated. Also, go check out my main channel, the description, Everyday Hoops. It's a basketball channel. They do the exact opposite of what we do over here. So if you like basketball, know someone likes basketball, let them know about the channel down below. And yeah, I'll see you guys later. Peace.